In this video, we're going to take a look at our next topic when it comes to NSX connectivity, which is going to be Layer 2 VPN. Now, this is kind of a interesting design, interesting deployment method that we're going to walk through. We're going to talk about how it works first, and then we're going to go through and configure it. It's not super hard to understand, but the steps that you need to go through and deal with, it's kind of tricky. First time I went through and configured, I was like, wait, what am I doing? So essentially, if anybody that comes from a Cisco world, especially from a Cisco Nexus platform, or a Cisco ASR platform, they are going to probably be familiar with the concept of OTV, Overlay Transport Virtualization. And essentially OTV is a layer 2 over layer 3 tunneling protocol. L2 TPv3 is another variation of that, so is VXLAN, where you're tunneling layer 2 traffic over a layer 3 backbone between your endpoints, where you need to stretch layer 2 communication between two different locations. They could be in the same data center, between two different racks. They could be in two different data centers that are two geographic different locations. MPLS layer 2 VPN, stuff like that. All of these layer 2 tunneling technologies are necessary when you have endpoints that are in the same subnet that need to be able to communicate with each other, and the connectivity between them is not layer 2 end-to-end. Oftentimes it'll probably be layer 3, especially if you're talking over some sort of MPLS or internet connectivity. So essentially what we're going to be doing, I'm just going to come over here to NSX edges because it gives me more area to whiteboard. Essentially what we're going to go do is set up a tunnel that's going to allow us to connect two different locations together. So we have our Edge Services Gateway that is going to directly be tied to a logical switch on both sides. So we're going to have a logical switch, so this will be LS, and I'm going to actually call this L2 VPN, so it's obvious when I go to map the VM's VNICs to the logical switches what it'll be. And these guys are connected up to the CSR 1000V, and then we have another connection down here to another Edge Services Gateway, and then he's going to have another connection, and this will be another logical switch, and this will be L2 VPN as well. I'm probably going to swap out LS for DC2, and over here this will be DC1, just so that it's obvious. We have VMs connected in here, so we'll have, say, VM1 here, and he'll be tied to this, and we'll have VM2 will be tied to this guy here. This guy right here is 172.29.101.10, and this one here, actually let's make that 11, and this one here is 172.29.101, or sorry, 110. Back that up a little bit. This will be 110.11, and this will be 172.29.110.12. The problem with this is, though, is everything connectivity-wise from here to here is all layer 3. So we need to tunnel this, right? We need to set up some sort of communication between the ESGs in order for this to work. How we're going to do this is we're going to create a tunnel between these guys, and this tunnel is going to be encapsulated inside of VXLAN, and which is already being done between our VTEPs, but that's basically what we're going to go ahead and do. Now, there's a couple things that need to be done here. So in the OTV world, Overlay Transport Virtualization, you'd have a tie-in to the uplink, and then you'd have a tie-in to the VLANs you're going to want to stretch. So this right here is going to be associated to here, and this is going to be a trunk link that's going to have a sub interface connected to it there's going to be an IP address associated and that type of stuff, and then this sub interface is actually going to be tied to this logical switch. So as traffic comes in from the layer 2 VPN logical switch, the L2 VPN is just the name that we're going to give it. It's not actually specifically for layer 2 VPN. It could be used for anything really. But traffic is going to come in from this VM, it's going to hit the logical switch, and then it's going to come up into the subinterface of the trunk. It's going to be on the ESG. And then what we're going to go do is we're going to configure another connection here that's going to tie it to this uplink, to this interface connecting to the CSR. And that connection is going to be how we're going to allow the layer 2 traffic to come up to the Edge Services Gateway and then basically be put inside of a VXLAN header and sent over the layer 3 network to the other ESG. So when we go in here and this traffic comes up to the Edge Services Gateway, we're just going to take that, let's say that ICMP packet, and we're going to put it inside a VXLAN, and we're going to ship it over here. He's going to get over here, the VXLAN header is obviously going to get ripped off, and then this guy right here also has all this stuff set up. So we have this uplink configured, or actually, sorry, this one right here. This thing, this guy is going to be tied to the interface, and this guy right here is going to be a trunk, and we're going to have a sub interface configured on it, sub int, and then the sub interface is going to be tied to this logical switch right here. Now that's only part of it. We still have the server/client part of the configuration, meaning this is kind of like a PPTP tunnel with some additional capabilities. So PPTP was the point-to-point tunneling protocol, and what that simply means is you would have connectivity between, say, your computer and some server somewhere, and it was layer 2. So your PC was on the same subnet as the server and anything else that the server had connectivity to, and you had access to it. It was an unsecure layer 2 VPN. In this case here, we're going to be adding layer 2, we're going to be adding encryption and authentication mechanisms to this. So it's going to be a secure layer 2 tunnel. This is going to be how that works. So unlike the IPsec VPN we created in the previous videos, where we went through and configured one side to be in one subnet, the other one to be in a different subnet, and we could ping over the VPN and open up the web browser and all that good stuff. This case here, we're going to be taking this a different direction. We're going to be on the same subnet for both devices, and we're going to be able to ping over the layer 2 VPN in order to access, we'll be able to pull up the web browser of our Windows servers at the HQ location or DC1 from the DC2 location. Now, we're going to have to go through and set up a user communication here. So there's going to be a username and password combination that's going to be configured and all that good stuff. And what that's going to basically allow me to do is authenticate both sides. So one side is going to be the server, which will be DC1, and the client will be DC2. He'll be joining the VPN and all that good stuff. As you'll see as we go through the configuration, there's a lot of little moving parts to this one. So I'm going to try to go as slow and methodically as I can so that it makes sense. And I've already done a little bit of legwork on the back end on the virtual machines that we're going to be adding to this so that we don't have to worry about some of the config at the end. We're not trying to jump back and forth, and I don't want to lose anybody. All right, so let's go ahead and start diving into this config. The first thing I need to do on this side here is a logical switch. I actually went ahead and deleted it. Oh, actually, sorry, it's still here. I created L2 VPN. I can go ahead and just edit this guy. I'm going to call this guy here real quick. This will be DC1-LS-L2 VPN, and I'll save that like so. It's tied to the DC1 transport zone, so we'll be able to play around with it as we go. And when we go to configure this logical switch will be tied directly to the Edge Services Gateway. You'll notice that there was no DLR in the process. No DLRs are used for this because we need to be layer 2 adjacent. We need to have the logical switch that connects to the VMs directly attached to the Edge Services Gateway. I don't know if you can, as far as I know, you can't do this on the DLR. This is an ESG only capability. So I'm going to come over here to the Edge Services Gateway. I'm going to click on this guy right here, and I'm going to go down to the Configure tab and Interfaces. Now what I need to do is I need to configure a device, an interface, with a connection to the rest of the network. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to click on to here, any of the available interfaces. I'm going to click on Edit. And the first thing I need to do here is I'm going to call this guy here. This will be L2 VPN, and I'm going to call it a trunk link. Okay. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the pencil, and I'm not going to connect this to a logical switch. I'm going to connect this to a distributed port group, specifically management. So I will have an IP address that I'll be able to tie to, which will be the 10.10.02 address. I'm going to click on OK. Now that I have that there, this is my uplink to the rest of the world, and I also need to add a subinterface. I'm going to click Add Subinterface. The name of this guy here will be DC1-L2 VPN, like so. The tunnel ID. This is basically going to be our VLAN ID, if you will, and I'm going to use 110 because that's going to be the subnet that we're going to be using. The backing type will be network, and the connected to, if we click on this, will tie us to a logical switch, which will be DC1-LS-L2 VPN. Click on OK. And that's going to be how we tie the logical switch. Any of the VMs connected to the logical switch will be called from here. Their traffic will be brought directly to the Edge Services Gateway and then be punched out over the IP network inside of a VXLAN header. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a subnet here. I'm going to say 172.29.110.1 and the 24-bit mask. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK and then save. And that's going to take a moment or two to do its thing, and then I'll be able to go from there. So, with that being said, we are just about done. There we go. Alright, so you can do more than one subinterface if you want to, but for simplicity, this is pretty straightforward. Now I'm going to jump over to the VPN tab. I'm going to come down here to L2 VPN. And the first thing we need to do is we have the server and the client config. Now the difference between these two, the server is listening for incoming traffic, the client is sending traffic. So we need to go ahead and edit the global config. The IP address we're going to tie this to is our the uplink IP address that we have configured to connect to the CSR1000V. We're going to be listening at port 443. The encryption algorithm, we're going to be using AES 128 GCM with SHA-256. And all the other ones except for null SHA-256. This one here would be more of just an authentication piece. There would be no encryption. All of these other ones offer encryption with authentication. But look at it from the perspective, if it's just authentication, it's not authentication in the respect that you want to exchange a password. It's authentication in the respect that you want to provide integrity. Where, think of it like you write a letter to somebody and you put it in the envelope, and then you seal the envelope closed. That's supposed to be tamper resistant, meaning people, if somebody was to open the letter, it's going to be very obvious that somebody did because the seal is going to be broken somehow. Well, with null, it's going to be like you're able to put it up to the light and you're going to be able to read the contents of the letter, but you won't be able to change anything about it. These guys here, think of it like and you can use you can turn them all on. I'm going to use AES 128, but encryption with authentication is going to be, you're going to put the letter into a brown envelope that you can't see through, and you're going to put some stronger, the authentication is the same, but the integrity is still there. So obviously if you ripped open the letter it would be obvious that it had been tampered with. So that's basically how that works. And that's all we're going to have to do from there. I'm going to click on save. So it's you're just basically identifying the encryption algorithm here. And then you need to come down here and add a site configuration. So who is it that I'm going to be peering to? So peer site, I'm going to go ahead and enable. And this guy here is going to be, I'm going to say this will be DC2 L2 VPN. I'm going to come down here. The user password is going to be VPN user. The password, it's got to be one of those long 12-character passwords. So it's going to be the same one we've been using for a long time now. The password 1234. The stressed interfaces. What do we want to send over the VPN? In this case here, we're going to choose DC1L2 VPN, bump that to the right, and click on OK. And then if we wanted to do anything else, we could. I'm going to go ahead and click on Add. And then I'm going to click on Start. And then I'm going to click on Publish. That's going to take a moment or two to get through its configuration. But once it's there, it'll be essentially the DC1 site will be effectively listening for any layer 2 VPN connections from any of the other locations. So now I'm going to go back here one level, and I'm going to jump over to the other NSX manager. On here, I need to go to logical switches. I'm going to go ahead and create a new logical switch. I'm going to call this one DC2-LS-L2 VPN, and it's going to be associated to the DC2 transport zone. Click on Add. And then I'm going to come over here to NSX edges. And I have to do the exact same thing again. I click on the edge. I'm going to come down to Configure and select Interfaces. I'm going to click on the second one here and go Edit. And then I'm going to say this guy here will be DC2-L2 VPN, like so. It'll be a trunk link. And I'm going to connect this guy right here. I'm going to connect distributed port group, and I'm going to say the management port group. And then on the sub interfaces, I'm going to, the name is going to be DC1 L2 VPN. The tunnel ID is going to be 110. The backing type is going to be network. It could be other ones. Excuse me. But the one that I know works is going to be network. I'm going to associate the logical switch to this guy. Click on OK. And then I'm going to add a subnet. So essentially what the subnet is, this is going to be the IP address locally that this particular ESG is going to be the default gateway for. So I'm going to put in 172.29.110.2/24. I'm going to click on OK and save. That's going to take a moment to apply, and then we're going to have the other connection squared away and ready to go. So that'll take just a moment to configure itself. There we go. I'm going to go over here to VPN. I'm going to click on L2 VPN, and then I'm going to come over here to global configuration, but I need to change the mode to be client, and that changes some things. I'm going to click on edit, and I need to point to the IP address that I'm going to connect to. And as you can see, I've already done this. I know it works. I'm going to point to 10.0.10.10.0.2. The encryption algorithm is going to be AES 128 GCM SHA-256. The stretched interface, I'm going to call the DC1 L2 VPN, bump that to the right, click OK. Come down a little bit, nothing else really needs to get added except for the VPN user and that ridiculously long password. There we go, click on Save. And then we're going to click on Start and then Publish. And that's it. We've done everything we can in order to get the VPN to work. I'm going to give that a second to do its push, and we will be in good shape. After that is done, we should have connectivity, and we'll do a couple quick verifications before we move forward. I'm going to come over here to this guy. As you can see, I did test this out. I'm going to come up here and show service L2 VPN, and we can see that it is currently up, which is a great sign. So I'm going to go ahead and I can say trunk table and see what we're trunking. We can see that we're trunking VNIC2 is coming across. Everything's looking pretty good there. If I was to say bridge, we can see what we're bridging. We can see the communication going back and forth and all that good stuff. And if I was to say E-tables, EB tables, we can see that there's a bunch of stuff going back and forth there. But what I really care about is this guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to connect the devices back to this logical switch. So I'm going to jump back over here to host and clusters. And on WinVM2, if I click on him, you're going to see that he's not connected to any networks. I'm going to go to Actions, Edit Settings. I'm going to go to Disconnected, go to Browse, and then, whoops, it does this every once in a while to me. I'm going to cancel that. Let me go ahead and refresh the screen. Every once in a while it does this to me where I have to refresh, and then I'll be able to make the change. There's an easier way to do this too. You can always go to Networking and Security, find the logical switch, and then add the VM that way. But I'm going to do it this way just because I'm right here. Edit Settings, and then Disconnected, Browse, come down here to scoot this guy over to the right a little bit. And we're going to choose the DC1 LS L2 VPN. Click OK. And connected. Check the checkbox. Click OK. And that's going to reconfigure the virtual machine. I'm going to come down to L2 DC2 LVM1 and the exact same thing. I'm going to click on disconnected here. Whoops, let me back up the train just a little bit. Or I could, that's another way I can do it. I can click over here. I can click on this guy right here. I can right click on him and say add migrate VMs to another network. Browse network. I'm sorry, cancel. Let's do right click here, migrate VMs to another network, browse, and I'm going to push these guys to this guy right here, which will be my DC2 LS L2 VPN. Click OK. Next, we're going to associate the virtual machine NIC to that guy. Click next, and then finish. So reconfigure that virtual machine. All right, so that means we're done. Now I get to the fun part. Let's go to DC2 LVM1 and WinVM2. All right, so I have my IP address. Let me go ahead and log into this guy real quick. This will be the real test, right? If I hit the up arrow, I can see that my IP address is 172.168.101. That's right, I forgot about that. So I can change the IP address real quick if I need to. I just need to get out. I would definitely need to do that. Let me go ahead and close this guy out real quick. That's something I forgot to do. I know it'll work because if I come over here and I do the ping, haha, that's funny. ifconfig. I might have to, oh, you know what? I see what the problem is. Edit connections. Edit. It's supposed to be there. Yep, that's good. IPv4 settings. I can change this real quick to be 110. 110. Like that. And then 110 over here. And save. Okay. Close that out. ifconfig. Let me go ahead and I will quick restart. Actually, before I do that, let me come over here and change the config of this guy to be the same subnet because I didn't. That was something I was overlooking. I don't know why I chose 101, 110, and then this will be 110 as well. Click OK. Close, close, and then ipconfig, ipconfig, there we go. Now that's good to go. So let me go back over here to networking and security. Look at the L2 VPN. So he's associated. Let me go and every once in a while I run into this problem. Let me go ahead and reboot the VM. I will go ahead and reboot it. I'll bring you guys back in here in just a moment. Alright, so basically what I ended up having to do is I rebooted, which was, I needed it to reconfigure it, but essentially I had to go into the logical switches section and I removed and then re-added the VM to the logical switch and then it popped up. So we can see that the IP addresses are now are changed, and we can see that the IP addresses are in the same subnet now. So if I come up here and try to ping 110.20, I'm able to ping across the VPN, and if I pull this guy up and I hit the up arrow, we can see that we are actively sending traffic across the VPN. Now if I was to stop the VPN, or I'm sorry, stop the ping, not stop the VPN, click on Firefox, I should be able to pull up the connection to the IIS server that's running currently on the server itself. I'm going to pause while that's doing its thing. Alright, so the server is now back up. I'm going to, or I should say, Firefox pull up. I'm going to type in 172.29.110.20, hit the enter key, and IIS pulls up. If I come back over here and hit the up arrow, we can see we're sending a lot of traffic across the VPN. So that tells me that the layer 2 VPN is working the way that it's supposed to be. Now if I come back over here, let me go ahead and minimize this guy. Can we ping anywhere else? Ping quad 8. And I can ping quad 8. If I was to ping, ping google.com, I have internet access, and everybody's happy there. If I come over here and I ping google.com, if I could type, I have reachability to google.com, I have internet access, and I have layer 2 VPN access as well. That's because I have a SNAT rule on both ESGs set up for receiving any traffic that I receive inbound. I'm going to go ahead and send it out to the internet. So obviously you might want to change that depending on your security policies, but we have the operation in place and where you're working, which is what I want to have ultimately. So layer 2 VPN is working as well. I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out with me in this video, and until next time guys, take it easy.